So let's take a look at the homework. I'm going to go through and sort of help you pick some options. Just keep in mind that there are always different ways that you can solve. So if you're looking at this sheet to help you decide, this isn't an end-all be-all of absolute correct or incorrect ways. Okay, so let's start by looking at number 1. Okay, if we look at number 1, it says, if we go down our list, right, is there an x to the first power? I'm going to see if I can't zoom in here a little bit more, make it a little bit easier for you to see. Okay, it says, is there an x to the first power in the equation? There is. Is it a binomial or a trinomial? We have 3 terms. Does a equal 1? It does. Okay, but we can't think of, can we think of multiples that add up to 6? So can we factor it as a trinomial? 1 times 8 is 8. So 1 and 8, 2 and 4. So 2 and 4 will add up to 6. So we can factor this into an x plus 2 times an x plus 4. We can then set both of those equal to 0 and solve. So we'll get x equals -2 and x equals -4. Okay, if we look at number 2, number 2 is, right, we look at our list. Is there an x to the first? There is. Is it a binomial or is it a trinomial? Okay, this is a binomial. So we can factor out a GCF and set each factor equal to 0. So this has a GCF of x. Okay, so that leaves us with x minus 4. We can then set each of these equal to 0. This one's already solved, so we'll add 4 here and get x equals 4. Okay, if we take a look at number 4, again, if we go down the list, sorry guys, I'm trying to figure out this new camera and trying to make sure I'm showing you what you need to see. So sorry when it wiggles. Okay, if we look at number 4, we're saying, is there an x in the equation? There is. Okay, is it a binomial or trinomial? It's a trinomial. A does not equal 1. So our best option here is probably to go with the quadratic formula. Okay, so it's already set equal to 0. So we'll have a equals 2. B equals 3, C equals 1. So we'll say -3 plus or minus B squared, so 3 squared, minus 4 times 2 times 1, all over 2 times 2. Okay, and then we'll put all this stuff in underneath the square root. So we'll get -3 plus or minus the square root of 1, all over 4. The square root of 1 is 1, so that becomes -3 plus or minus 1, all over 4. So that means we need to calculate both options. We're going to do -3 plus 1 over 4 and -3 minus 1 over 4. Okay, so -3 plus 1 will give us -2 over 4, or a -1/2. And a -3 minus 1 is a -4, and a -4 divided by 4 is a -1. So we'll get answers of -1/2 and -1. So just some thoughts, if you're using the list, that doesn't mean that this is the end-all be-all choices. Okay, but if we use the list, okay, there is an x to the first power in this problem. Now, when it asks, is it a binomial or a trinomial, right? This one really has 3 terms, 1, 2, and then this 6 is the 3rd term. So this is a trinomial. You need to add the 6 over. Okay, this will be factorable, or you could use the quadratic formula. You could do completing the square as long as you followed that decimal all the way through. Okay, on 6, you could solve this by taking a square root because there's no x to the first power. Let's jump down. Let's look at number 10. Okay, so if we look at number 10, we have x squared minus 6x equals 4. If we truly go through the steps on our list, okay, there is an x to the first power. It is a trinomial, right? 1, 2, 3. A equals 1. But we won't be able to factor it as a trinomial, so we could do completing the square here. Okay, so b is negative 6. Half of that is negative 3. Squared is positive 9, so we'll be adding 9 to each side. 4 plus 9 is going to give us 13. On the left-hand side, we'll factor, so that will be an x minus 3 squared. Okay, then our next step tells us to square root each side. So the square root of 13 is plus or minus the square root of 13. This cannot be simplified any further, so we'll add the 3 to each side. So we'll just get x equals plus or minus the square root of 13 plus 3. Okay, now keep in mind, it would be totally fine if you went through this worksheet and you solved them all with the quadratic formula. You should still be getting the same answers. So maybe on this problem, you'd have them flip-flopped, right? You might get 3 plus or minus the square root of 13, but in the end, you should have the exact same answers. So if you chose a different method, that's fine, but your answer in the end should be the same. If your answer isn't the same, then you either chose an incorrect method or you made an error somewhere.